quick announcement at the end of the video. Make sure to watch till the end. Hello guys, and welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. So today what we're going to be looking at is a mob overrides, which is a specific thing that allows you to spawn certain entities within a location, assuming that the conditions for the spawning for that particular entity is correct. So for example, if you wanted to basically spawn pillagers at these locations like I'm basically doing here, all these locations actually should have pillagers now. So as you can see here, there's one there, and there's probably a few in the it looks like the villager might have been already shot at over on this one. So yeah, I put my test subjects through pretty extensive training. So but yeah, as you can see, it's basically generating those. There's probably a villager still inside this one, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a few things that you can do with these. You can have hostile mobs spawn, or you could have it so you disable spawns completely, so that's possible too. I'll be covering the different techniques and stuff over with the script and stuff. It does require the code to be locked, but it is an interesting thing. As you can see, like the pillagers are spawning here. Now I just copied over the script from the pillager outposts, and that's why it was easy for me to demonstrate this one, but it should work with pretty much every entity, assuming that you get the spawning conditions correct. Now some of them might take longer to generate. For example, if you were to put a creature down, like a creature generation, it will still have the same duration as spawning for regular entities for biomes and stuff like that. So you might need the weight really high for it to generate. So we'll be covering all that a little bit later, but overall that's basically what it is. You can kind of see that over time they do spawn, and sometimes it doesn't spawn right away. It is random, so I have it I think on like 20 for, or something like that, for the weight, and some of these don't actually have pillagers, but then you go to some of these other ones and they do. So it's just kind of like a random thing. All right, so let's go into the code, and then I'll show you what it will look like and then how to change it. All right, so first things first, we need to navigate there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the workspace, open workspace folder, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a folder like this, and we're going to go to the source, main, and then we want to go to resources, data, and then our namespace for our mod. And then what we want to do is we want to go to the world gen, and then structure. And then in this particular file, we will be able to find the code that we need. So if we open it up, by default, this isn't going to be here. So what you're going to be seeing is pretty much, let's see here, I want that one. So pretty much just the closing bracket and a comma like this. So basically just say spawn overrides, and then we'll have the curly brackets, which are objects, and then a comma because it continues the code after that. So we're going to be coding this in by hand based on the pillager outpost one. I'll explain how all these different things work, and then I'll also link in the description the actual page for this particular file, so you can see how the structure is. We'll be covering over that as well. It might actually be easier to not so much follow this as an instruction, but basically do it through the wiki page. So let's see if we can pop up that wiki page first, and then we'll start coding it in and create something like this from scratch. So if you go to the minecraft.wiki/w/data_pack, then you'll have this page here, which has all the information as well as links to the all the different folders and stuff and files for the data packs that Minecraft's been working on. So what we're interested in is going under the world gen one, and we're going to be looking for the one that says structures or structure, and we're going to be presented with mob overrides or spawn overrides, which is all this text right here. So we'll be covering how to build this from scratch. I will be listing a couple things as we go. Basically what these little icons over on the left here basically mean. They do mean something, so they're not just there for show. They're actually giving you information about the type of data that we're putting in. So now I haven't made a tutorial entirely about JSON files and the structure of them and everything like that. I will be doing that in the future. I just don't have the time at the moment, and I have a few other series that I want to start working on and stuff like that. So we will get to that in the future, and then this will make a lot more sense, but we'll be doing our best to kind of explain how the parts here actually function and stuff. So let's go ahead and start with opening up our thing. So the first thing that we're going to look at, I'm just going to move this over to the side so we can kind of see what's going on. So when it says spawn overrides, you're going to notice that there's kind of like a yellow, blue, and green. Let's see if I can zoom in there. So it's kind of like a square texture. If we zoom out a little bit, kind of like a squares. It's like little tiles or something like that. I don't know how you want to call it, but basically what that is it's an object. And now an object is basically in JSON file format, it's the curly brackets. So as you can see here, this is an object, the main one, and the default file is going to contain the object. So I'm going to move in a little bit more on this so you guys can see as well. So we have the two curly brackets here, and then we can follow this down and we can see that the next thing that we have is another object. And this is the mob category. Now this can be monster, creature, ambient, water creature, underwater creature, which I'll be covering all these in just a second. And then we have water ambient, misc, and axolot. I think that's how it's pronounced. I can't remember how it's pronounced. Monsters is for things like creepers, zombies, things that are hostile. They usually spawn during the night or on the surface or in the caves during the day. They're not necessarily going to be always there. Creatures, on the other hand, they have a lower spawn rate for when they do spawn, but they can spawn over time, especially if the chunks are loaded over a long period of time. For example, when you kill a pig in an area, it's going to attempt to spawn different creatures in that particular pool. On the surface, it just requires a light level to actually spawn them. So usually this is on the surface on specific blocks like grass. So that would be a particular one that you would use for entities. Now this might not work for all entities, just a specific type. Like pigs will probably generate on grass and not in your structure, so that might be a problem. You might want to use monster or something else. Ambient, I think, is things like bats. Those are generally found in caves and underground. So water creature is things like fish, squids, dolphins, I think, are also part of them. And then we have the glow squids, which are under this one. Water ambient, I'm not entirely sure what water ambient is. That could be something else. I'm not sure. And then there's misc. I'm not sure what miscellaneous actually means or has in it. And then we also have the axolotls, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's what they spawn in. They're going to be spawning in caves, specific types of caves to be specifically, usually in water. So that's your general options for spawning. So when you're working with this, because this is an object and we have text here of input, what we're going to need to do is we're going to break this up a little bit, and we're going to delete a couple of these just so we're on the same line here. We're just going to make sure that it's on the same line, and we're going to go 2 in, and then we're going to do another curly bracket, And what we want to do is we want to also create a string here. So we're going to go with double quotations. And for this, what we're going to do, because we're following the other one, we're going to go with a monster spawn. And we're going to type monster here, and then we're going to make sure that we have a colon. And then that's all set up correctly. So that's what kind of spawn pool. Now, if you have all these different types of spawn pools in this particular list, now if you wanted to add another one, it's pretty simple. What you can do is you can go ahead and do a comma at the end, and then you would basically spawn another one down here. So we're going to go and spawn the other one. We'll say like we're adding creatures now. So we'll go ahead and add creatures to this other tag here. So basically this is what you would look like when you have multiple of them. Anything between would be like with a comma after it. And this allows you to, if it's empty, now it does require it. So it does say in here that, pretty sure that it says it requires it. Must be one of the keys. So one of those, and then it does require the other things as well. But what it does is it allows you to disable the spawns for those particular creatures. So if you don't specify what creatures are in these things, it will basically disable entities from spawning in that area. So that's a pretty cool feature to actually have. So you can play around with that as well. So we have our monster one, and now we have a couple properties in this particular one. We have one called bounding box, which basically controls where the spawn location of that particular thing is. So piece basically means that it will spawn only in the structure pieces, or the structure files, the bounding box for those structures. Full will allow it to generate in the entire area of the particular structure boundary. So for example, I'm pretty sure it's the structure boundary. So overrides the spawn setting inside of the bounding box of the structure. So the bounding box is basically, if we go into, we'll just create another structure quickly so I can demonstrate it. So the bounding box of the structure is, I think it's on maximum structure distance. Let me just quickly check this. Yeah, so it's going to be the maximum structure distance, which is set by default by 64. So this is the size of where everything can spawn. So if you have a really large size, like villages, then setting this to full, it will spawn it all in that area, not just specifically where your structure pieces are. Now, your structure pieces are literally the parts that you save that have a flat surface. So they'll be able to spawn anywhere on those. So if that makes kind of sense. That's with a piece one. Full does the entire structure location. And we need to set that up. So this is a different icon. This is called a string, I believe. So we have kind of just like a text version with quotations. It's hard to see. We'll zoom in a little bit more so you can kind of see that there's a quote here and a quote there, and then we have a what do you call it, kind of like text between. So we're going to need to do a string for this one. We'll go to our particular one. We're going to break out this a little bit more, and then we're going to just subtract down a little bit, and then we're going to go 2 spaces in. And then what we're going to need is quotes, and we're going to need a comma, and we're going to need some quotes after that as well. So this is also not the first, this is going to be the first setting. There's actually 2 settings in here. The next one is an array. We'll cover that in just a second. But we're going to need a comma after this because there's 2 settings that we're going to be working with. Now the first quote, we're going to need to copy over the bounding box. This is the property that we can set for this particular thing. And then our value will either be full or piece, depending on what one we want. So I'm going to copy the full one, because that's what pillager outposts use. If we go over here, you can see that it uses full. So we're going to go ahead and then set another property. Now this one is an array, so this one is a little bit different. It can be empty. So again, this is like what I was saying before. If you wanted to disable spawning of certain creature groups like monsters or whatever, you can just leave this particular bracket empty and not include the rest of the settings here. And that will allow you to disable any spawns of that particular type in the structure location. So even if you didn't want to add specific entities, you can always do that, and it will prevent mobs from spawning passively, as well as when well, I don't think I think it's just passively. So this one is a little bit easier to see. So it's basically 3 dots and then 3 I don't know, rectangles, and basically what that means, it's a array. So arrays are a little bit different. They are just the square brackets like this, and in that case there is absolutely nothing that we need here outside of having a property name. So we're going to do a property name, and we're going to do a quote or colon, and that part's set up now. So by default, if you don't want monsters to spawn, this is the code that you would basically use for your structure, and it will basically prevent any monsters from spawning in that particular area. Now, they will still be able to walk onto that area if they pathfind over there, but natural generation, they won't be able to actually go over to that particular like spawn in that area. So now let's go ahead and cover the next part, which is a little bit different. Now inside this we have just an object. It doesn't have a specific name. So you can see there's spawns for this one. It comes after it, but this one doesn't actually have a name itself. That's because we don't need one. So objects don't necessarily, when in an array, need a what do you call it, like a name itself. So we just need to make sure that it has the curly brackets. Now this is basically going to be your main object for what entities you want to be spawning in this particular one. Now there you have all these properties below. So if you're spawning them, it needs to have all these different types of properties. Some of them might be optional, and I don't know if it says any of them. Yeah, it doesn't say that any of these are optional, so they're all required by the looks of it. And there is other information here that will help us kind of debug some of these properties. So for if you wanted to add multiple of them, we'll cover that in a little bit, but let's start working on the properties themselves. So we're going to make a break here, subtract down to the part here, so we have a nice clean space and follow the format. And then what we're going to need is a string. So we're used to that one. And this string is going to be the namespace and registry of that particular entity. So this is a string, so we need the quotes, and there is more data after this, so we're going to put a comma at the end. And we're going to basically, if we wanted to do pillagers, I'm just going to go and look at the thing here. So it'd be under Minecraft, and then colon for basically the namespace, so Minecraft colon, and then the registry of that particular entity. So I'm just going to copy this over so it's something that easy to kind of recognize. And we could even do something like pig as well. So we would do pig, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to spawn under monster conditions, so that might not work. So we're going to do that. That's our first setting. And then the next one that we have is going to be an integer. So if you're not familiar with an integer, basically it is a completely rounded number. It doesn't have any decimal points. That's basically what the I stands for with this one. And we have 3 integers after this. We have weight, min count, and max count. Now weight is basically the chance of it spawning. So higher numbers will produce more spawns. So it will kind of speed up the process a little bit more. I haven't really played around with it too much. I set it to 20 and it doesn't seem to really do too much, but we're going to put weight here. And now because this is an integer, what we need to do is we need a solid number. So if we wanted to follow the ones as a villager or pillager outpost, then it would just be a solid 1. So we would do 1, and then because there's data behind that, we would do a comma, and then our other integer is minimum count. So this is going to be the minimum count of which the mob that we're basically specifying, which is the pillager in this case, can basically generate in a group of. So in this case, what we have is for pillagers is just 1, and the maximum count has to be above the minimum count. So equal to or above. So it either needs to be a 1 in this case, or it needs to be higher than 1. If we were to set it to 0, it would not work. So that won't work like that. If this was like 2 and we tried to set the maximum count to 1, that won't work either. It needs to be either 2 or above, if that makes sense. So again, we're just going to copy this part over. And sometimes you have to be careful with pasting in here. And we're going to do just a 1 for this one. Now, basically, if we were to set this to 2, it will spawn anywhere between 1 and 2 entities every time that it does try to spawn this particular creature. Now, this can be useful, but depending on the spawn rate of like the type that you're using, like for example, creatures would be a lot slower for spawning. You might want to even set this to like 3 or 2 or something like that for creatures. But if it's something like pillagers where there's less conditions and stuff for them to spawn, I think pillagers specifically don't require the light level requirement. So they can kind of spawn in areas that aren't really lit by torches even during the day. So if that's the case, then you would probably want to just keep the spawn rate really low. You might need to experiment with it a little bit more, but that's basically the thing there. Now, say if you want to create another mob, maybe we want to have creepers spawn in these areas, what you would do is you would just copy this this object, you would put a comma after it, and then what you would do is you paste it in, make sure that the bottom one doesn't actually have a comma, and we could do something like creeper, and it's going to basically go ahead and run from this particular pool. So for example, it's going to do the monster one, and then it's going to I don't know if it's like random. Let's see here. So it's going to spawn a list of objects, 1 of each mob, which should spawn in the structure. So I don't know if it will actually spawn all of them at the same time or just 1, but you can kind of get the idea of how you would add multiple entities to a particular list. So to zoom out, we're just going to expand this now, and you can kind of see the entire code that we've created. So this is the entire code that we would use for the structure generation. Now, because this is already set up for a structure, I'm going to save this, and we're going to go ahead and see how that works in game. All right, for this purpose of the test, I don't know if this is going to be required to test or not, but we're going to create a new world anyways, and we're just going to recreate this one, and something went wrong, so we need to go back and check our code. I see what I did wrong with this particular file. So basically, I made one of the most common mistakes. I added a comma at the end of these last particular ones, so it crashed because of that. Again, it's really important to make sure that your format is set up correctly, or you'll run into errors. So I'm going to save this again and try again, and we should be fine for going into the game. All right, so as you can see, we got to the screen, so that's good. Before, it wouldn't let me actually enter the screen, so we can actually start working on testing the thing. So we're going to go in here, and we're going to just fly around a little bit, and we're going to see if creepers actually generate during the day, because I'm not sure if that condition will actually work out. Because technically they spawn only in dark conditions, so we'll see if that works or if they follow the same conditions. There is a pillager over here. It doesn't look like any creepers are spawning yet. Maybe if we go to this one up here, we'll just kind of fly around and see if there's any particular one. Now there is a pillager over here. Not seeing any creepers though. So we can try setting it to night in just a second or two, and we'll see if that helps. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's any creepers spawning in these locations. So let's go ahead and set the time to night, and then we'll start flying around these and see if there's any creepers spawning. We have a huge ocean, so it will allow us to kind of see if there's any going to spawn in these locations. They might have a slower spawn rate. We might need to increase that. Could just be really rare too, because there's not a lot of surface area for them to spawn on, so it's quite possible that's all that it is. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the weight for creepers to probably, we'll set it to 100 just to see if that works. Now it's still a solid number, so we should be fine. And we're going to generate a new world this time and follow the same path to see if the creeper spawns. It might just be a really low weight for them to actually generate. So we're going to delete that older world that we just had, and we're going to recreate one that I had. And we'll set the time to night this time, and we'll see if that helps. Actually, we'll probably fly around first just to see if they're going to spawn in, because I'm not sure if they're going to spawn under light conditions either. I'm pretty sure they won't, but it's always good to check. I don't know. Maybe it's just night. All right, so let's go ahead and set the time to night, and we'll fly around and see if there's any creepers that spawn in these lake ones. Yeah, I'm not sure about the creeper spawning, actually. It might work better with custom mobs, honestly, so... Or I could have just got the registry wrong. I'm not sure if there's an S or something behind it. I guess one of the things that we could do is just wait out and basically place some grass down here. It could be too light around the structure too. So let's go ahead and just break some of these lights, and we'll see if anything spawns at the location. We'll place some grass down, because any monsters should be disabled now, except for pillagers and creepers, right? So give them a little bit more area to spawn. And we'll back away a little bit, and we'll just see if they spawn in this location. I think there's a certain range for creatures to spawn, but we'll keep our eye open on this. I'll wait out this area a little bit longer and off camera and see if there's any that spawn, and then I'll cut back in if they do. Alright, so I just saw something green walk from over here, so we can go over here. And you can see that a creeper did spawn. So it's extremely rare though when they do spawn. I would even say maybe 1,000 might be needed to actually have them spawn, but it does seem to be affected by light levels and possibly the distance of the player from when they do spawn. So it might need to be about, I would say about this distance from the structure for them to spawn. I'm not sure if that's going to really matter that much, but as you can see here, he did spawn. There's enough surface area where there was a chance for him to spawn. Obviously, they can't spawn on the stairs up here or the slabs, but they were able to technically spawn inside the house in most of the location, and as well as a lot of the location on the exterior where the grass and stuff is. And I only got one creeper out of the whole entire thing, so if we fly around to the other ones, it's quite possible that there's still not going to be any creepers because there's too much light around them. So I think with the light level that we have around most of these places, they won't be able to really spawn due to the location and stuff like that. So just some stuff to keep in mind when you're actually playing with the spawn overrides. Some of the conditions for them to actually spawn are going to be required still. So like light level for a lot of the regular mobs and stuff like that. If you have other conditions for your creatures, then it's quite possible that they will require certain conditions to be applied before they can actually spawn as well. So we'll be covering structure sets next episode, so or next tutorial. So we'll be looking at how we can kind of randomize these structures based on the biome and some other conditions. So that will be pretty fun to do, and probably our last video as well. So for the structure series. I have this friend that has their own server hosting company, and they have the lowest prices in the server hosting community, and they've given me a promo code to give to you guys. So if you want to get a good deal for the first month, then you can use the promo code Northwest for 45% off your first month. Offer expires July 19th, 2034. The link to their site is in the description. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, rate the video, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace out.